Good afternoon, everybody. What a full room and great afternoon it is. Welcome to the inaugural ceremony for the Golden Goose Award. I'm Frank Sesno. I have the privilege of serving as the director of the School of Media and Public Affairs at the George Washington University. For many years before that, I had the privilege of working at and with CNN and covering this town in all its glory, and up here on the Hill many, many times, including several of these members. Today's story is especially encouraging. I'm excited to be here today to honor this group of scientists who've made extraordinary contributions through their work, far beyond what they, or their families, or their students, or others might have imagined. That's what the Golden Goose Award is meant to be all about. It honors research funded by the federal government that may have seemed odd or obscure at the time, but has led to some incredible and important benefits to society. Significant new technologies, major medical advances, or something else that contributes in an important way to the economy, national security, our quality of life, you name it. The scientists with us today have all been recognized in the past for their extraordinary work. Some have received Nobel Prizes. This award is a little different. We're celebrating today not only their work, but also something special. They represent about basic science that needs to be protected and nurtured, and that's the time and the resources we provide to let the unexpected happen, to let these breakthroughs take place. Because sometimes the serendipitous connection between a fascination with the most minute, most mundane elements of nature can result in a discovery or discoveries that lead to something important and things that change lives. Now, all of us recognize the value of the investments the federal government can make in scientific research. The National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, NASA, the Department of Energy, Agriculture and Defense, and others support a broad array of research in a broad array of fields: biomedical, physical, social sciences, mainly at universities around the country. Most of that research is funded competitively based on peer review or merit review. It's a unique model that's served this country and the world extremely well. It's the research that fuels the economy, gives hope to a world seeking cures for deadly diseases, and helps our nation in its search for alternative energy sources and new ways of making our men and women in uniform safer and more effective. It's the ways we consider how we're going to invent the future of a planet that will house 9 billion people. For this reason, it's also an area of government that has strong bipartisan support since World War II. And you'll see that support demonstrated today right here. You'll see both Republican and Democrat members of Congress who are here today for their support of the Golden Goose Award and the federal investment in research that makes all of this important work possible. We'll say it gets a little personal for me too, because as I was explaining a little earlier, my daughter just graduated from college. She will be the first scientist in the family, in the immediate family, and is about to go diving all over the world because she's determined in her marine biology major to figure out how to fix and how to save the oceans. I cannot think of a thing that a child could do that would be a more important gift to her father, family, or the world. And she knows her allowance is connected to this too. So. Science is sometimes easy to make fun of, right? I mean, and we see it all the time in the media and elsewhere. Late night stand-ups, and sometimes here on Capitol Hill. It can be an easy target for politicians seeking a quick headline. Nobody did that better than Senator Bill Proxmire. I know because I reported on him from time to time. It was a great story. You knew that it was going to be a headline and something to smile about, and it would ripple across the media all day long. Those of us of a certain age remember well the Golden Fleece Award, an ingenious device that frequently exposed real government waste, but occasionally, and maybe too often, targeted federally funded research. Sometimes it backfired on the senator, but the larger problem with the attacks on scientific research was that they undermined public confidence in science and the federal investment in research. That was not funny. In a minute, you'll hear from Congressman Jim Cooper, who was so bothered by those attacks on science, they decided what was needed was something to counter the Golden Fleece Award, call it the Golden Goose Award. He based the name based on the fable about the goose that laid the golden egg. Because those golden eggs, the discoveries made as a result of federal research and investment, have been so incredibly valuable. Those are stories too. It took a while, but several organizations have taken up Congressman Cooper's challenge to create the Golden Goose Award. They share a belief in the power of the federal investment in science to benefit America and the world, and that happens in ways that far exceed the amount that's actually invested, the dollars actually put in. They share a belief that even as the country grapples with its fiscal problems, with its budget deficits and national debt, that we have to continue to make these investments in our future, in the planet's future, in our competitiveness on this planet. They worry that even those who today make fun of specific kinds of research or who would eliminate funding for entire disciplines are a threat to the goose that lays these incredible golden eggs. So now, I'd like to introduce the man who had this great idea a long time ago, finally seeing it come to fruition today, a great supporter of science and golden geese all over the place, Congressman Jim Cooper of Tennessee.
Thank you so much, Frank. The anti-science forces have just called 5 votes, so I'll be brief. No, this is not a meeting of Ducks Unlimited. Second, it only took me 20 years to be an overnight success in this field. Third, this is the goose that keeps on giving. Science works for all of us in ways that we can't possibly imagine. You know, the greatest storyteller in all of congressional history was not Bill Proxmire. It was Mo Udall. And Mo used to say that the greatest stories in the world always had something to do with mystery and sex, sometimes divinity and royalty, and humor was always a big plus. So one listener told him one time, he could do that in 2 sentences, no problem. And Mo said, okay, big shot, let's see what you got. And the guy said, oh my God, said the Queen, I'm pregnant again. I wonder who did it this time. Science provides the best material for stories because science is true, and as we all know, truth is stranger than fiction. Our job as congressmen is to tell these stories and retell them to build support for science. The Golden Goose Awards are all about the power of narrative. I could have told an anti-bullying story today because so many scientists have been bullied. But I'm going to tell an even shorter story. It's in 4 words. Women and children first. We all know in any emergency, it's women and children first. Well, in budgetary emergencies, including sequestration, the same rules should apply. Science is our women and children. Science is our future. Science is our hope. So let's support science. Let's give science priority as we do women and children. We have wonderful colleagues here today. I'm particularly grateful for Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania for being here, Rush Holt from New Jersey, Jason Altmeyer also from Pennsylvania. Why don't we hear from Congressman Dent from Pennsylvania? Charlie?
Thank you. Thanks, Jim Cooper, for your strong leadership on this issue. Much appreciate your leadership and friendship, and as well as your commitment to science. You really have been a great leader on this issue, and I wanted to commend you for that. Also, I wanted to thank Alan Leshner, too, for his role in this program as Chief Executive of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Of course, our MC, Frank Sesno, too, for your participation here and your work at George Washington University, and that is the buzzer for a vote. So I'm going to be real quick. I'm proud to be a sponsor of this Golden Goose Award. Obviously, science is something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. The advances that so many of you have been making is of great significance to our country and to our way of life, and to, in many cases, better health. Oftentimes, many of these scientific projects or research projects you hear about may seem peculiar to many folks, but there's often a real reason behind it. Today, you're going to hear from some folks today, one of whom from my alma mater, Penn State. I'm very proud of their work with bone grafts and with the research they did with coral. I'm not going to begin to try to explain what they did, but it's significant. And there are others here too who have made similarly significant advances in research. And by the way, as a father of a Penn State freshman in the honors program in chemistry, I'm very pleased that she's following your footsteps, Dr. White, and a nephew up there too in engineering. But obviously STEM is important. Science, technology, engineering, math is important to all of us. And oftentimes people who develop those skills graduate on into these types of programs where they engage in seminal research that really does advance the human condition. So I'm really just here to say thanks to all of you. Thank you for your good work, and really to promote science because it does improve us, improves all of us, and especially it improves the human condition. Thank you again, and congratulations. Now you're going to hear from a real scientist, Rush Holt from New Jersey. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Charlie. This is long overdue, and I really want to commend Jim Cooper for doing this. As a scientist myself, I chafed under the ridicule that Bill Proxmire, Senator Proxmire, heaped on so many worthwhile undertakings. There are all sorts of things, you know, antibacterial substance infiltrates a broth. Sounds kind of trivial, doesn't it? Well, it's penicillin. You know, cathode rays from Röntgen and acoustic trauma in guinea pigs, blood pressure of pregnant seals diving. You know, a couple of researchers, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, were doing a little bit about some search engine funded by the National Science Foundation in library sciences, by the way. The sex life of the screwworm. You know, it's easy to ridicule things like this. They have been enormously important in our lives, economically and for human welfare. So too, microwave emission by stimulated emission of radiation, microwave amplification, sounded to the outsider and probably to legislators as silly. Well, that just goes to show that legislators shouldn't be treating themselves as peer reviewers. Peer review should be done by peer review, and as Jim Cooper has said so eloquently, what we should be doing is making sure that these scientific enterprises have the resources they need to do their work. This is a good way of bringing attention, remedying an old wound, and I hope advancing science in the United States. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Jason Altmeyer from Pennsylvania. I too, like Rush, was going to list a whole bunch of things that have been funded by this type of research. I always talk about the study of the eyesight of eagles, which at the time, about 30 years ago, was ridiculed. It turned into LASIK eye surgery, night vision goggles, and soft disposable contact lenses, among other things. I'm from Pittsburgh, and we are leaders in transplantation, organ transplantation. And in the 1950s and 60s, it was the VA that first founded the study of transplantation, which at the time was considered to be like science fiction. It was impossible that you could take an organ from one person and give it to another person and it would work. And now it's commonplace because of scientific research. It never would have happened because nobody believed it was possible. But the point of today is, number one, to recognize the great work of some people who have literally changed the world because of their research, and we're going to do that. But it's also through the work of Jim Cooper and everyone that you've heard from to show our colleagues and to show the American people that it really is worthwhile, that this type of government spending makes a huge, monumental difference. And if we didn't have these types of programs, we would all be worse off because of it. So that's what this is about. Thank you all for being here. Thank you especially to my congressional colleagues who are here. I look forward to seeing the awardees.
Thank you very much. You know, all the more important because in my business where so many budget cuts have cut so deeply, science reporting and some of these stories that need to get out to the public are even harder now to get out to the public, so this award can speak louder and go farther as a result of what's taking place today. Representing the Golden Goose Award founding sponsors, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Alan Leshner. Dr. Leshner is Chief Executive Officer of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. As many of you know, AAAS is an international nonprofit organization. I'm not done yet. International nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing science around the world. It also publishes the journal Science. Dr. Leshner serves as its executive publisher. Dr. Leshner.
Thank you, Frank. You can tell that I find all of this very exciting. I couldn't wait to get up here. On behalf of the science and engineering community, on behalf of the founding organizations, I want to thank Congressman Cooper and his congressional colleagues for coming up with the idea and for supporting it. I can tell you I've been in Washington for 30 years trying to look for a vehicle through which we could connote the fact that basic research is good for you, that there are unexpected benefits of it, and you ought to do it. And this has turned out to be a fabulous vehicle. I have to say, when we launched this award at a press conference here in April, we thought it would generate a little bit of interest, but we have been really pleased and impressed by the fact that there have been articles in major newspapers, editorials, just this week in the Washington Post, and the science and engineering community is just thrilled. The truth is, it looks like at last people are starting to get it. Basic research is good, and it's good for you. So this has worked out great. Announcing the concept was easy. Making it happen has been a tad more difficult. And I would like to recognize all of the founding organizations that have been a part of making this happen. The Association of American Universities, the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, the Breakthrough Institute, Progressive Policy Institute, the Richard Lounsbury Foundation, the Task Force on American Innovation, the Science Coalition, United for Medical Research, and there have been additional support from the American Chemical Society, Mathematical Society, the Association of American Colleges. And I can tell you that the number of science and engineering and related societies becoming a part of this seems to increase constantly. One of the things that's interesting is that these organizations not only represent a dedication to the promise of scientific research, but the diversity of scientific disciplines and research sectors that are the underpinning of our nation's innovation system. They came together because of a shared respect for fundamental research and the unexpected nature of discovery that can lead to breakthroughs that impact and improve the quality of life in this country. I also want to just take a minute and recognize the distinguished members of our selection committee who reviewed the many nominations, took time from their own research, and came up with the list of awardees who are with us today. Bruce Alberts, the editor-in-chief of Science, Wendy Baldwin, who's with us today, the president and CEO of the Population Reference Bureau, Mel Bernstein, vice provost for research at Northeastern University, Stephen Fluharty, the senior vice provost for research at the University of Pennsylvania, Dennis Hall, the vice provost for research at Vanderbilt University, Sharon Hayes, the vice president, Office of Science and Engineering of CSC, Leslie Tolbert, senior vice president for research at the University of Arizona. Since they did such a good job, maybe we can take 1 minute and give them a hand. So I just saw him come in. Congressman Moran, would you like to say hello?
I don't need to. No, we got to vote shortly, and just like Rush, we're gonna have to leave momentarily.
All right, you came to get him, right?
Just want to have good talking points, as Jim Cooper said in his editorial. We need to show what the federal government is doing, particularly in the area of research and development and its application to the economy. So these are good talking points, so proceed. Thanks.
Well, once again, on behalf of the academic and on behalf of the science and engineering community, I want to thank our congressional colleagues for doing this. This really does represent something very important and very special for the country and for our community. Thank you.
So now let's take you into time and into a video to get to know a little bit more about the awardees' stories. We said it's all about stories. I'd like to thank first the organizations that helped sponsor the video, because after all, it does take something to put them together. The American Astronomical Association, American Physical Society, Arizona State University, the Association for Psychological Science, Boston University, Texas Instruments, and Vanderbilt University. Video's about 8 minutes long. So there's the story, and now comes the moment we've been waiting for, the Golden Goose Awards. The first Golden Goose Award goes to Eugene White, Rodney White, Della Roy, and the late John Weber for their work on coralline ceramics. Dr. Roy was going to be here today, but was forced to cancel just yesterday for personal reasons. Dr. Leshner will hand out the award. And as our recipients accept the award, they're going to come up here because we're going to have an opportunity to speak with them and think about all the golden eggs they have laid after the awards are handed out. Next is Martin Chalfie, Roger Chen, and Osamu Shimomura, for their work on green fluorescent protein. Unfortunately, Dr. Shimomura cannot be with us today, but gentlemen, please come forward and accept your awards. Finally, the man who inspires us not only in science, but on the playing field of life. The third Golden Goose Award goes to Charles Towns for his invention of the maser, which led to development of the laser, and so much more. You know, the incredible work that we saw in the video that led to the bone graft, the new bone graft materials, took, what, some 20 years or so to work through, as I understand. Important to understand for the public to understand how much time and how some of these discoveries like this actually unfold. As I understand it, the initial concept came from research that had been conducted by the late John Weber that you were building upon, a marine geologist at Penn State, on the structural makeup of coral and other marine animals. But I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit, was there an aha moment, multiple aha moments, this notion of serendipity, did that play a role in your aha moment? Let me pass this down to you.
I think you're right. The serendipity component of it was, I had been working in electron microprobe, scanning electron microscope, and when John Weber brought and looked at corals and echinoid structures, they were unique in the world of materials at that time, as far as I was concerned. I'd never seen anything like it, and we'd worked with most of the major companies, materials companies in the Northeast, and I think I had seen almost everything being made at that time. So here was something that was uniquely structured, and the thought occurred, aha, boy, if we could copy that in the real world, because calcium carbonate's basically useless. Billions of tons go to waste.
Did you actually say aha?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But anyhow, we took off from there and learned a number of ways to parlay those structures into useful materials.
How about you? Do you have an aha moment? Grab the mic and jump. Nothing? As you were working on this, though, did you have a sense of the importance and the role that it might play down the line?
Eventually, once we got into the research, then it developed very quickly that there were applications. And, you know, in retrospect, it's intuitive, but when it happens, it's nobody thought of it yet.
And how about this thing of serendipity, this kind of, I wasn't planning on that. I wasn't thinking about that.
Life still goes on that way, you know. Even in current contemporary research, what we do as it progresses, a lot of what we learn, you don't suspect that's the way it's going to be. So it's a very important principle.
Let me move to Dr. Chen here. Are you hearing me with this? Let me grab this. I mentioned a moment ago that my daughter is going into marine biology. Well, we went out to the Monterey Bay Aquarium not long ago, and they had an incredible display of jellyfish, right? And to the lay person, they're just kind of pretty things floating around in the water, unless you're swimming with them, and then they're not so pretty. But you and Dr. Shimomura really have revolutionized in many ways our understanding of life through this green fluorescent protein, GFP. I'm wondering if you could speak a bit about how it's used, the value in terms of the way it's actually applied in our lives.
Well, green fluorescent protein essentially makes it possible for us to directly see most of the important process biochemistry inside living organisms that previously was invisible. And on the video there, I was giving an example of how you could now see HIV spreading from one cell to another. And there have been applications from many thousands of scientists in tens of thousands of papers in all sorts of areas, infectious disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, I think were some of your questions, but the importance has pretty much taken over throughout most areas of biomedical science, because we want to be able to see directly what cells, proteins, organisms are doing, and it was invisible, and now we have a chance of, being able, for example, to cure diseases because we understand these events better.
When you first were doing this, would you ever have imagined that it would have played the role that it's played in identifying and curing these diseases like this?
I think, if there was one crucial breakthrough, which was that the protein, the gene from jellyfish, which actually both Douglas and I, both Martin Chalfie and I got from Douglas Prasher, if it would work in another organism, and Marty was the first to show that, that I think was the aha breakthrough moment, which then I think a lot of us knew it was going to be tremendously valuable from that point on. But that was a big risk, whether it would work to that first extent.
So let me ask you, Dr. Chalfie, about that risk and about that aha moment, because you were there, we weren't.
I was working on a completely different area, but I worked on a transparent animal, and I realized if we put this in, we could see it in the living animal. I actually ignored the whole rest of the seminar I was listening to. I was so excited about the idea. But when we said, well, let's just try it, people at the time said, it's not going to work. And we put it in, and it did. And there was a lot of jumping around.
You were excited about it.
Yes.
That was aha.
I don't think we ever said aha, but we said, whew, wonderful that worked. I'd like to say one other thing, just very quickly. I think that all of the stuff that we're being awarded for really shows a full range of what basic research is important for. So for example, we have applications, basic research leading to direct applications, translation, like the materials work that we've heard about. We have basic research that leads to the development of tools, such as the laser, that have a very broad range of applications. Not a particular one, but a whole wide range of it. And then you have something like GFP, that to me is a bit of basic research that enabled an enormous amount of additional basic research. Roger talked about the studies of HIV virus in cells, mouse cells, and so on. And other studies that have then in turn led to other things. So there's a ripple effect. And so I think all of the prizes sort of exemplify all the different ways that basic research is important.
The unintended consequences. I'm wondering if I could ask you a slightly personal question. That's not too personal, but a slightly personal question. You're out there doing this work. You're working on jellyfish, and you're hearing back here in the vaunted nation's capital, people poking fun at silly-sounding research. And I don't know how close that ever hits to home, but how do you deal with that, and what do you make of that?
Well, I think part of it is an educational aspect. In fact, this is what this event is all about, is that when we do this work and when we submit a proposal for funding, we have to justify why we are studying these things, what is important about it, what we hope to learn.
But you don't know what you're going to learn.
Often we don't, but we start off with a proposal to look in various directions, and then once we start to do that, and we need a broad net, you're absolutely right. You do need to have a way, you do start to look at different areas, bring things in, and the discoveries are accidental. GFP was an accidental discovery. Osamu Shimomura was interested in finding out why jellyfish produced light. The way he discovered that is he was frustrated, the experiments didn't work. He threw the prep at the end of the day into the sink. The sink had some seawater in it. It hadn't worked. Turns off the light, he's about to go home, he looks at the sink, it's glowing brightly because the sink had seawater which had calcium, what he was missing. But then when he looked at the light that was produced, it was the wrong color. It was blue, the jellyfish were green. He said, there must be something else there. And that's how green fluorescent protein was discovered. A whole series of accidents. But then again, those are the discoveries. Those are the really important aspects.
I want to come work with you. That's Dr. Towns, it's been nearly 60 years since you invented the maser. Now, we did a little research on that. 1953, Ian Fleming published the first James Bond book. The first color television set was sold, and my parents got married. So I think on that alone, we can celebrate a great success in the year 1953. But you had, and you explained it in the film, a lot of skeptics. A lot of people said, what are you doing this for? What are you going to spend the department's money on this for? And I wonder if you could tell us, at that time when there were so many who were questioning your process and your discovery, did you have any idea how it might be used and where we might end up with it?
Well, I had some ideas. I primarily wanted to produce high frequencies to do spectroscopy, getting shorter and shorter wavelengths to do spectroscopy for science purposes. For science purposes. Sure, it may have some other applications, but I was primarily in science purposes, and nobody else was much interested in it for any other reasons either. Now, in fact, two scientists who was chairman of the department and the previous chairman of the department, both of whom got Nobel Prizes in science, so they weren't stupid. They came in, and I was working on this, and they said, look, you've got to stop. That's not going to work. We know it's not going to work. You know it's got to work. You're wasting the department's money. You've got to stop. Well, now, fortunately, you see, when you're a professor, you have some independence. And even the chairman of the department can't fire you just because you're not stupid. Just because you're making an intellectual mistake. So I said, no, I think it has a chance of working. I'm going to continue. Well, they marched out of my office angrily and so on. And about 4 months later, we had it working. Wow. And nobody paid much attention to it. A lot of people came by and said, oh, that's an interesting idea, but, you know, nobody paid attention to it. Once it was working, then a lot of people jumped into the field. And that's great, you see. A lot of other people begin to contribute, and lasers have been, a lot of work has been contributed to lasers by many, many, many different people, and I'm just delighted with that.
And as you look around today and you see all the applications for laser, do you feel like you're the father of all of this?
Well, father in some kind of sense, I suppose, but I recognize that an awful lot of other people have done things and contributed. I had something to do with it, yes, but a lot of other people contributed, and that's just great. That's the way science works. A lot of scientists contribute and contribute more and more, and you have an idea, and other people add to it, and go further and further. Scientists and engineers keep adding, and that's the way we develop. We need to trade ideas and work with each other and get new people coming in all the time.
So the father had mothers and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, but in basic science, and let me ask all of you this, and a couple of you can jump in, and I'll pass the mic down. I'd like you to talk briefly about what you think would have happened in your lives and without federal research money, and the role that this federal research money and this funding plays in the advancement of science.
I'd say in our case, had not the Defense Department granted money to purchase the basic equipment that was used very broadly throughout the university and by many, many industries, I would never have been able to see the material that John Weber was bringing forward. So that was pivotal and it's absolutely critical.
I think there's a conceptual issue here also, that it's not the successes necessarily, but that the whole infrastructure of education and in this country is failures, how to think rather than how to be necessarily successful every time, because taking an idea and throwing it away is as good as a success, but the whole process, if the kids forget how to think, we're all in big trouble. So.
Yeah, well, the federal government is the main agency that's willing to fund science for its own sake, because we keep hoping that private enterprise, some people say, oh, why can't private enterprise take over? But they take over at a very late stage when it's pretty safe. And that's sort of their job. And the federal government has largely taken the role of sponsoring the stuff that is risky from the outside point of view, but this actually goes through a tremendously competitive process for people. And we are all asked, justify the significance. And so it's not like it's in a complete vacuum, but you do have to explain why this could at least make a difference to other scientists, and even better if it has direct application to the outside world.
That's the key, isn't it, too, explaining it to the outside world. There are people who are going to be running around saying, look, I've lost my job, or I need more of this or that, or the roads are broken, and, you've got to make a compelling case. You as scientists, collectively.
Certainly, we have to explain what we're doing to lead people to understand why we are spending our time doing this. We justify this to ourselves as well. We need to have this as well. Education is an important aspect to this. Being able to talk to people, it's a little disconcerting to have people say, I can't explain what so-and-so's done. I can't understand this, but it's good stuff. I think that we owe it to the public to explain to them what we do and why we feel it's important for us to spend our lives doing it, and to justify what we're getting in the funding. I also wanted to answer your other question that you mentioned. To me, there have been two things that I think have been exceptionally important in my scientific career. The first, and this echoes what Dr. Towns said, is that I'm at a university. For me, that's important as opposed to industry, where one might have to work on a project that has a particular goal. The university actually doesn't care what I do. They just want me to succeed. So I have a great deal of freedom in the type of research that I can do. And the second is my funding. And I think people sometimes don't understand this. When we write a proposal for research funding, it is not a contract. We never say, I'm going to do these 3 or so experiments. We always say, at this moment in time, these are the 3 most important things that we can do. And if we are convinced the study section that they should fund that, we get money. But the money is given to us as a grant on the assumption, I feel, that if we come up with a better idea, we're not locked in to doing what we said 3, 4, 5 years earlier. We get a chance to apply the new knowledge. When GFP came around, we could then apply it to things, not say, well, we didn't write it in the proposal, so that's the end of it.
Let me just ask you one question before I go to Dr. Towns for the last one here. I was talking to Congressman Cooper on the way in, and he said the real worry here is sequestration. Goes through, 10% gets cut out of NIH and other things. 20%? Okay. What happens if there is a deep cut, do you feel, in basic research and the funding of this kind of basic research? What happens? I'll come to you just one moment.
So as I said in the film, basic research is the foundation on which all it is. And we never know when it's going to come to fruition. So it's a long-term investment.
Right.
It's not a short-term investment. If we curtail funding for the development of the next generation of scientists, which is what we do a lot in our labs, of training the undergraduates and graduate students and postdocs that then far exceed what we've done. If that gets stopped, if the research stops, it has, again, a negative ripple effect of preventing the breakthroughs in the future.
Dr. Towns, last word to you. If this funding is jeopardized, what happens?
Well, new things are new, and we can't predict what's there. We need to explore. And if we cut down exploration, we won't have those new things. We won't have the new things. We'll have things we know and we want to develop and so on. That's important too. But we need to explore and find those new things. They're completely new and unrecognized, and which are going to pay off enormously. And we'll just look at history. We look at history, we see how much exploration has helped us.
Professor, I hope we can come back and celebrate with you your 100th birthday and say that this money has been put in to where it belongs. So, you are in so many ways an inspiration to us all. You still have that office, right? You go into your office?
I just have a good time.
Oh, okay. Well, our deep thanks to the inaugural winners of the Golden Goose Award. May you continue laying many golden eggs and your inventions and discoveries and all the rest long into the future. To the members of Congress who participated here today, particularly to Congressman Cooper, who stayed with it for 20 years to make this happen, and certainly to Dr. Leshner as well. This is only the first of what will be an annual event, I'm told. It needs to be an annual event so that Congressman Cooper and others can come back and find others who are deserving of the Golden Goose Award. And I should draw your attention, if you didn't see it, it's easy to find, the op-ed that he had in the Washington Post earlier this week, I think it was, isn't that right? Where he observed, and I have this great line here from the op-ed which I had, Columbus thought he knew where he was going, but he didn't know what he had found until many years later. So let's honor our modern-day explorers. We need more of them. So thank you all very much. Thank you to all of those who made this possible, and congratulations again on the Golden Goose Awards. I understand. Congressman Holmgren is here. Congressman, last word. Is that all? You can do more. Okay. Thanks to you all. Have a good afternoon. Congratulations.